There's nothing like being crouched over in the fetal position in front of the porcelain god, the toilet, sweating in a cold sweat, shivering all in the same time, throwing up, and having pain in your bones and aching all throughout your body, experiencing the withdrawals of heroin. Nothing. I mean, it's indescribable until you felt it, and then when you feel it, you want more, so that you don't have to feel it anymore. It's intense. It's really bad. So my name is Pej. I'm with Beginnings Treatment Centers, and you know, when it comes to talking about heroin, it's definitely a drug that was an ultimate taboo, especially in my community. Growing up in a Persian family household, to two parents that were, doctors and physical therapists, to even think of their son doing heroin, I never would have thought that I was going to do it myself. I was growing up as a young kid in a school where we, were anti-drugs. I didn't want to ever use, and so when I started to experiment and I got into smoking weed, which for me was a gateway drug. I mean, it started with weed, it started with alcohol, and they took me into other drugs. When I got into doing more serious drugs, I remember heroin was one that I was most fearful of, but I wanted to try it because I wanted to see what it felt like. I wanted to get out of right here, right now, and that is exactly what happened. And obviously, what happened for me in my experience with heroin was the first couple of times that I tried it, the taste that I would get in my mouth from smoking it made me realize why it's so addictive. And then also just using it continually, I couldn't get enough. It was captivating. I'm talking like a lot of people describe it as the ultimate euphoria, and truly it really is. I mean, it's a feeling that, again, it's indescribable. It's nothing that I want anyone to go out and try if you haven't tried it, because when you get it in you, you just want to keep going and going and going. And it puts you in a state of bliss, but the type of bliss that's very temporary. It takes you out of right here, right now, out of mind, out of sight, out of body, out of everything. But it grips your soul and it takes you in very bad places. Basically, you go to any lengths to try to get it from anybody. You will end up having no mercy over your family, your friends. You will steal, you will lie, you will cheat to try to get it. And once you're very addicted to it, there's just, you don't even care what will happen next. You won't care if you get arrested for it. But then again, when you get arrested for it, if you end up in jail, kicking in jail, in other words, withdrawing, that's excruciatingly painful. And so, I don't wish that upon anybody. You definitely, when detoxing heroin, if a person makes that final decision that they want to get off of it, I do recommend a proper detox, because just trying to wean yourself off is usually close to impossible. It's best to get off of heroin with the help and assistance of either a doctor or a detox or somebody who's a medical professional that could help you get off of it appropriately, because there are comfort meds and the type of medications that can get you off of it without having to endure too much pain. Now, what really gets me is when I was using heroin, I thought that it was just going to be, a small experimental phase, and before I knew it, I was engulfed. I was doing it all the time. I was always going after it. I couldn't stop calling the dealer enough to get more and more, and it seemed like I wanted to keep on stopping because I knew that this was becoming a problem. And every time that I was withdrawing or I would run out, I was absolutely convinced that I wanted to stop, and I really, really wished that I could, but I was so possessed, for better sake of words. I was so captivated by heroin that I just couldn't find myself quitting. There's just no way around it. So what I ended up doing was calling again and getting more, and then I remember for a while I went on a short opium stint, which is obviously it was real opium from the old country, from Iran, that we would smoke that on top of a electric stove, and we would do it with 2 hot wires. And the whole fascination of of seeing the smoke come through the two hot wires that were heated up and then go into a smoking device that we had, and that whole part of chasing the dragon and just going after it and feeling that high was captivating again. Now, the difference between that is that when I would smoke that, I thought that it's a lot different than heroin, because heroin was instantaneous, opium was more of a body high. But I do remember that there was often many times that I would find myself in front of the toilet, throwing up, sweating and shivering all in the same. So my body felt like it was freezing, but I was sweating, and there was a lot of times when I couldn't get it, and I would just be laying in front of, in the fetal position, aching all over. Body was aching, body would shut down sometimes. I couldn't eat, I couldn't hold food down, I couldn't go to the bathroom for days and days. And it's funny that I'm making this video right now because my mom really doesn't know to what extent I went in using that stuff, because it was such a taboo that I never really talked about it much. But I definitely I'd gotten into heroin for a while. Now, something that a lot of people are doing these days, which is very dangerous, is they mix heroin with meth. And when you do that, the street name for that is goofballs. And basically it's going really fast, and then just slowing it down. And when you're shooting that stuff, it's extremely dangerous. It's deadly. It's deadly dangerous. So again, I see a lot of kids coming into treatment that are mixing the two, which is all kinds of dangerous. Now, why has heroin become such an epidemic? Why is it to where it's at right now? What I'm noticing more and more, and just working in treatment, the majority of the people that come into treatment these days are, I see a lot of young men between the ages of 18 to 28 years old, and women. And I'll, when I'm first introducing myself to them, I'll say, "What's your DOC, drug of choice?" And they'll say heroin, or even more recent, fentanyl, which a lot of street dealers are mixing heroin with fentanyl. Fentanyl is a higher form of an opioid. It's basically heroin times 1,000%. There's a lot of people that are using OxyContin, which is a synthetic form of heroin. It's basically medical heroin. And all of them are highly addictive. All of them are very hard to quit. And there's often people that have been prescribed medication for whatever reason. It could have been for pain, it could have been for something that had happened to their body, and they develop this dependency on the pills. And when they can't find the pills over a period of time because they either ran out or the doctor cut them off, they resort to a street dealer and getting straight heroin. It's more easily accessible for them, and they will go to any lengths to get it. And before you know it, they're doing heroin. Now, there's different types of heroin too. So the term "chasing the dragon," I think, was a Canton term that originated in Hong Kong, where people were smoking the vapors of heroin. I believe it started in the 1920, I believe, and then that's chasing the dragon. Then there's pill poppers, where these days the reason why the epidemic, I believe, has expanded and grown so much is because a lot of doctors are overprescribing people with medications, or people are curious and they'll go into their mother and father's or grandparents' medicine cabinets and find all the various different types of opioids, style of pills like Vicodin, like Percocet, like OxyContin. All of these are all opioids, and basically if they try them and they start using them, they get hooked on them, and then if they can't get them anymore, they resort to actually going after the big H, heroin. So there's pill poppers, there's people that are chasing the dragon, and then there's straight up people that are shooting dope. And that's what we hear a lot of these kids these days, the way they talk, it's like a casual reference, when I was shooting dope, when I was shooting dope, when I was shooting dope. And it saddens me because I see so many people from all over our nation that come into treatment, and I just think, there is not one state in this country where the cartels haven't gone and distributed the heroin appropriately. It's out there. I'm talking people from Delaware. I'm talking people from Maine. Places where you didn't even know, you don't hear much about what people are doing in those parts of the country, but clients that I've had in the past have come from those states. Baltimore, huge. Many different parts of the world. Heroin is in this country, it's all over, and kids are getting their hands on it. It used to be back in the day that kids were just smoking weed to get high and have a little bit of fun. These days, kids start off with smoking heroin, and then they get into full-blown, intravenous shooting of heroin into their veins, and just trying to get high. And I've seen a lot of deaths as a result of heroin. I've seen people that have been shacked up in a bathroom with complete abscess, like with wounds all over their bodies. People that haven't been able to shoot it. They have no veins left in their body. They'll shoot it in their neck. They'll shoot it in their eyes. They'll shoot it in between their toes. That's the extent. That's where it'll take you. So you have to think, like, it's such an intense drug that people will go to any lengths to try to get it in them to take them out of right here, right now, and have that euphoric feeling. And you'll often notice that heroin addict will nod out in strange places. They sometimes will have a cigarette dangling out of their hands, and that cigarette will burn right through their shirts or their coats or whatever. There will be a lot of burn marks from cigarettes because they're nodding out all over the place. And that's what happens when a heroin addict does heroin. They nod out, and because they're in that state of euphoria to the point where they just go into like this deep sleep, and often they don't come out of that sleep. Many of them overdose. They die in that moment because they shoot too much. They just basically, their bodies can't handle it. Their bodies shut down. Their breathing shuts down, and they overdose on heroin. So what can be done about this? So I wanted to talk a little bit about, obviously, raising awareness is of great importance, and I would love to have more parents come forward and speak on a national level. Town hall meetings are great and all, but I think it should be made much more public in the sense that it should be, besides the news reporting about how many deaths are related to per year of heroin overdoses, I think that parents should be publicly speaking to the point where more and more people can see it, and how can we prevent it, and how can we help, how can we clear out our medicine cabinets, how can we make it apparent to kids that this is extremely dangerous and it's something that you just don't want to do. I don't think that everyone is born an addict. I think it's a lot easier these days for people to develop that dependency just through their own curiosity of trying something. If they start with pills, or if they just start experimenting with heroin, it's so addictive that it's not preventable to overcome it or withstand it. Once you're hooked, you're really hooked. And I always knew that about drugs like heroin, because it gets you and it grips you and it holds you, and you cannot get off of it as much as you try until you really want to try, and then it's almost too late. So what else was I going to say about this whole heroin epidemic is that, the success stories. So do we see people that get sober or clean and sober from heroin addiction? Absolutely. I've seen some major success stories. So it's very possible. So it's basically do or die. You either do recovery or you die. I mean, that's pretty much where you're headed. I don't know anybody that uses heroin in moderation, or heroin, as a recreational form. There's just no way of doing it. You can't do heroin like a gentleman or a gentlewoman. You're either on it or you're not on it. You're not just doing it here and there. Heroin holds you, it grips you, it captivates you, it makes you want it all the time. So you're either on it or you're off of it. And if you're on it and you want to get off of it, there is hope out there. There are plenty of people, especially in the 12-step community, where right now it's really huge, where a lot of heroin addicts are getting well and they're working on themselves. They definitely go to the therapy that they need. Often there's deeper rooted issues that people have, to where they need to work through stuff in order to see like what it is about heroin that makes them keep on staying on it. But I know that I have seen a lot of miracles and continue to see a lot of miracles. Young men and women who have overcome their addiction to heroin and changed their whole lives around, and now they are heroin-free, drug-free. They don't do anything anymore, so there's a lot of hope. Unfortunately, though, we see more people dropping and dying as a result of not getting that appropriate help that they need. And I believe that everybody gets a chance in their life to make that decision of, it's either I get well or I continue to die a miserable death as a result of overdosing and using too much heroin. And these days it's basically like Russian roulette, because you get some heroin that's cut with fentanyl. You don't know what you're getting, and you don't know who you're getting it from. So you use it, and then maybe just that one time that you're using it, and you overdose. And it can happen from just smoking it too, not just shooting it, not snorting it, not eating it. So Yeah, I just wanted to go over that today with all of you all, and thank you for listening to me talk to you about heroin. I hope this video was helpful and relatable to you, and we would like if you would subscribe to our channel, and if you ever need any kind of help or you know somebody who is suffering with heroin addiction, feel free to contact me at any time. My number is 949-751-7761. We specialize in doing interventions on working with families or addicts that are addicted to heroin and other drugs. I'm always readily available. I'll make myself readily available to you.